We're live. Am I, we're live, everyone. I hope we are. I hope you guys can hear me. Tell me if my mic is working. Somebody write in the chat. Tell me if my mic is working or if it's not working. If you can't hear me, if you can hear me, uh, somebody write in the chat because I am not hearing this. Come on. Can you hear me in the chat? I think we can. Yes, it's working. Okay, great. Thank you all. We have 11 people here so far. We got everyone on the stream. Everything is set. Now, tonight we are going to be talking about the new news that was just announced that there is officially a writer, or at least a first writer, for the MCU X-Men movie. And now we're going to talk about why it's just the first writer and why this might not be the only writer working on the movie. But even though that's going to be the main topic tonight, we haven't done a live stream in a very long time. If you guys have any questions for me, if you have any sort of topic you want to bring up to add to the conversation, even if it's not related to the MCU, even if it's not related to X-Men, then you can leave it in the comment section on the chat on the side. And if you want to really help out the channel, you can leave a super chat and donate a certain amount to the channel. And if you do donate to the channel, then that means that 100% for sure your comment will be answered on this channel. So thank you guys so much for joining. And we got 12 people so far, so let's get started. So we have a writer officially for X-Men, and it's sending my heart a flutter because we just had the finish of X-Men 97. You might remember that I was one of the few people who wasn't thrilled with the finale, but obviously they're making this announcement now because of the critical success of the show. Because listen, there's been debate on how successful the show is in terms of viewership, because Nielsen ratings is recording that it didn't chart at all, even though other things with other things like Marvel's What If, they charted on Nielsen ratings. And Disney and all of the streaming services have been a little sketchy with how they're recording how much viewership, how much it is relative to their other shows. So it's a little bit questionable how many people are actually watching the show, but that doesn't matter in this case because Marvel is looking at it as a show that is critically successful, and they have not had that for Marvel. Like even WandaVision, I think, was their most critically acclaimed show, but it really fell apart in the finale. So this is a big deal for Marvel to make it seem like fans, or at least the conglomerate of fans that are watching, are on board with the show again. So it makes sense that they would want to move forward with the news of a writer, and they've been looking for a writer for this X-Men movie since last year. So the writer in question is going to be, and let me say his name right, X-Men writer. I know I have it. It is going to be Michael Leslie. And Michael Leslie is best known for writing the script of Hunger Games Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Now, that gave me different feelings. Because if you've been watching this channel long enough, you'll remember I gave Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes a positive review. However, I just think that Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes is a decent movie, and it was very accurate to the source material, even enhanced the source material. It was a decent movie. I watched it a couple times in theaters. I haven't felt really compelled to watch it again since, which is to say that while it's a decent movie, it didn't blow things out of the water. It didn't blow me out of the park. It didn't hype me up or anything. And that's one of the aspects of this is why I was a little bit when I first saw the news, not because I think Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes is bad or anything of that kind. It's just that it isn't a writer where it makes me go, oh, yes, of course, this person has worked on a lot of amazing stuff. They've worked on all these successful things. Of course, this is going to be amazing. No, it's worked on just an okay film. And then I look at his other work. He's worked on the Assassin's Creed movie, which was in 2015, which was a bomb. The other things he's worked on aren't very impressive. Of course, as people are saying, that doesn't mean that, you can't judge what a person can do just by their track record on IMDb, especially when you're a screenwriter. Scripts go through lots of different rewrites and things. It doesn't necessarily, it's not necessarily the be all and end all of someone's work. And so it doesn't mean that he's necessarily a bad writer. And I don't think that he is a bad writer, but it did make me question, like, this isn't a writing choice that really gets me excited just yet. But the big thing that people are talking about, and I do see some of you people in the comments, I'll get to your questions in a second. It does, a lot of people heard Hunger Games and were thinking book accuracy, because the Hunger Games franchise, whether it's the prequel or the original is very famous for being incredibly accurate to the source material. Um, First of all, I want to point out this writer has only worked on the Battle of Songbirds and Snakes, that prequel, but I need to temper expectations a little bit with being accurate to the source material. I was talking to my sister about this right before I went on, and she pointed out that the reason why the Hunger Games trilogy or saga was so accurate to the books was not because of the writers that they got to work on it. It was successful because Suzanne Collins, the writer of the novels, had her hands so deep in the production. She would be on set. She would not let them work with the source material unless she had her say in it, unless it was insanely accurate to her material. And so that is why the Hunger Games were so accurate to the books. It wasn't because of the writers or the directors. That said, we should not take the hiring of this writer as a for sure sign that they are going to be accurate to the comics. I don't know this person's background in X-Men or Marvel. I would assume, I would like to assume that he knows X-Men and came up with a very good pitch for it, and that's why he got the job. But it does not necessarily mean very accurate to the comics. Also, just making a comparison, people saying that maybe Marvel is coming out of it where they're not hiring people who know the source material as they were doing with their other Marvel shows when we see that they were with X-Men 97. Well, X-Men 97 is a different department because, yes, Bo DeMeo was hired by Kevin Feige, but from what I'm reading it, Marvel Animation and Marvel Studios, the MCU, are just completely different sections of Marvel and Disney as a whole. So that is like they might have like very different hiring practices, and that's why X-Men 97 is so different. I would think like Marvel's What If was not very high quality in writing at all, but I would think that would be a little closer to the MCU, but that is the way it is right now, where I'm not sure that Marvel has all of a sudden turned a corner and is really going back to people who know the source material. I would hope that they are, though. So before I move on, let me get into some of you guys' comments. Jake Beam, hey JesterBell, if you were in charge, who would you cast as Gambit? Honestly, I would like to get an unknown as Gambit. I know that a lot of people have been saying Austin Butler, and like I wouldn't be mad. I've been thinking about it enough that I wouldn't be mad if he was cast, but I honestly would like to see a lot of fresh faces in these roles. I think you need to find a brand new actor for Gambit. I think you need to find somebody with a whole lot of charisma. Because the possibility to strike lightning in a bottle and find somebody who can give the charisma to Gambit as RDJ did to Tony Stark. I think that can happen, but I don't know that actor off the top of my head. I think you need to go out and find that actor. Let me see. The Beast actor from X-Men 97 was a truck driver in the first X-Men movie with Hugh Jackman. If they're going to be making live-action X-Men, they need writers that will follow the source material well and create a good buzz for the movie. Let me see. Continuing on show. What I want is a chronological film series starting with 1960s Gene, Scott Warren, Bobby, Hank, Professor X. The second movie brings the Claremont characters and then onward. Thoughts? Well, my thoughts on that, starting with the original stuff, like the original 5, like you could technically make a good movie out of anything if you are a good writer and you know what you're doing. But the reason why going back to the original X-Men stuff with those original 5 doesn't excite me is because when the X-Men series started with those characters, it wasn't popular. I was talking to Jacob the other day, and he was telling me about how the X-Men were originally created to rival the Teen Titans. That's why they were teenagers. That's why it was a school setting. And it was very, very different back then, and it did not sell. But then when Chris Claremont came in and they revamped it and they did all of the stuff like the civil rights allegory and all of that, and he was a much better writer. He brought in a lot of the soap opera elements. Like that is what made the X-Men the X-Men. And that is why most adaptations you see Jean and Scott already have a established relationship and all of that, because that's the like all of their development for their relationship getting started already had happened in that first series that was not very successful. So I actually wouldn't like that. I'm not saying that you couldn't make it work if you had a writer to come in and make it work for once conceptually. I would like a series to hit the ground running with a something similar to the 90s team where you have all those characters and you can have characters from different eras. And my dream lineup would be Cyclops, Jean Grey, Storm, Kitty Pryde, Rogue, Gambit, and Nightcrawler and Wolverine. Like that would be my dream lineup for it. I'd like to start it there and have the characters, some of them at least somewhat established before we get into it. And then I'd like the movie series to go on from there and see what you can do in terms of spin-offs like Wolverine movies, or if you can ever get like an X Factor film off the ground. Something that's going to be really confusing if they do make X-Men into a franchise is so many of the offshoots of X-Men as a franchise are also X-titled. Like there's X Factor, X Force, Excalibur. It's also similar. It's like, as me getting back into comics, it's hard for me to keep track of. But it's hard for me to keep track of as opposed to the Avengers, where it's like the Avengers, Guardians of the Galaxy. These are separate things. It's obvious they're in the same universe, but they're separate. X-Men is a lot of X-titled things. So I think that would be very complicated to adapt. Okay, let's see. I'd add other OGs like Iceman Angel to that lineup. I'd be satisfied. Who's 36? Okay. Someone says, did they change his powers in the show? If I remember, Gambit was immune to touch-based powers, so did they retcon his power self for the gross old man and young girl or romance? I know what you're referring to. In Gambit's solo series that started in 1999, yes, he was immune to Rogue's powers at one point because he had gotten an upgrade, which turned him into New Sun, and that was a storyline. Anybody who can touch Rogue for powers is all contrived, so they did not need to do that with the gross old man romance. But anyway, back to this writer hiring. Apparently, they're going to look for a director as well. And off the top of my head, I couldn't think of a director that could handle this, that would be willing to at this point, because it's hard. It's like lately, Hollywood has been sort of consolidated to indie directors who are just doing their own thing. And then it feels like these other directors who, when they go to work for Marvel, they just become consumed by Marvel, and it's like the directors are cast and it's the executives who call the shots. So it's hard for me to think who's a director who could really bring this to life. Who could bring this to life? But it's not off the top of my head. I can't think of anybody, because it's like Nia DaCosta got cast for the Marvels as a director, and she didn't do anything. She couldn't do anything because it was just the executives. So it's like, who can I get really excited of to direct these movies? Right now, I don't know anybody who I can see like climbing up the ladder to do this right now that would get me really excited for it. And here's the thing about the writers, and what I was talking about earlier about how you could have more than one writer. I think somebody said that the Fantastic Four movie had like 5 writers working on this script, and they kept just passing on the work to other people. And so just hiring a writer, that means that they're working with ideas, that they're going to be looking for a director. They want to make this movie, especially Deadpool and Wolverine are getting lots of traction for pre-sales. And so that means that they're going to want to do this movie, something that's very X-Men heavy. Gambit's supposed to make an appearance in Deadpool and Wolverine, just basically as a reward to Channing Tatum. But that's going to also increase the idea of why don't we get these X-Men characters off the ground? But we have to see like how soon is this going to happen, even because the industry is still in flux. Can they find a director? Can they get a script that's satisfying to them? Or are they going to rush forward with it and make the same mistakes that they've been making all over again and not let any director bring their vision to this? Okay, another pause to look. Another pause to look at the comments. JJ says, I'm scared for Rogue in the new movie after what they've done with her. They misunderstood the point of her completely. Jubilee's my favorite female X-Men, but I love Rogue so much. I agree with you, and I've ranted about that character enough to the point of annoyance. Here is the one consolation I will give, is that it's possible, and because it's not just me, there has been a lot of hate levied at Rogue in X-Men 97, and it's hurtful because to see all the love for Gambit and what he's getting, and to see all the hate that Rogue is getting, that's just terrible to me. I am hoping though that X-Men 97 can be a test, that they can take what people took positively from it and learn from that for the movies, but that they can leave behind what people didn't like from it. Like saying, oh, people didn't like the Magneto Rogue thing. People didn't like this portrayal of Rogue's storyline. They didn't like how it played out. We need to fix that, because Rogue was very, like, she became very popular because of the original 90s series and because of X-Men Evolution, and she needs to continue to be portrayed that way. They need to stop portraying Rogue only in relation to her not being able to touch people, because if you read the comics, you see that she has a much broader character than that. And I think that that is what both part of what 97 got wrong, and I also think that that is what the Fox movies got wrong. Okay, other comments here. Let me see. Somebody suggests James Wan, but I don't really see that, because like I wasn't very impressed with the Aquaman movies, and like the last one just leaves a bad taste in my mouth. I don't really see him. Like when I'm thinking about a director who should do X-Men, I'm thinking like someone on the caliber of like Nolan or Joss Whedon, just talking about them. Like I know Joss Whedon, bad person. He wasn't a bad director once upon a time. But I'm talking about somebody who's really high caliber, and I can see that. Like the Russos did a lot of action movie stuff for whatever reason. Right after the Avengers, he just really dropped. The Russos just really dropped off. But they had proven themselves as action directors, and they kind of built themselves up the ladder with Winter Soldier, and that really gave everybody the confidence that they could do the Avengers. Now it's like they rumored that the director of Shang-Chi might do Secret Wars, and it's like that was not a movie at all that inspires the confidence that this guy can do the Avengers. So I'm worried that they're going to, do something like that, like get a mid-tier director to be able to do this, and that's because there's no one else, because the auteurs are not going to touch Marvel. Like the really great directors are not going to touch Marvel. You've chased away James Gunn. Who are you going to get? Somebody said Jordan Peele, but I don't see Jordan Peele doing a superhero movie. And has he done anything other than horror? I don't think so. But it's like it's like Marvel has become it's become like people don't want to go near it if they already have a successful career. A similar thing is happening with DC, which is why they had to get unknown actors to be able to play these Superman roles, because they don't have the money for one thing, but also DC brand is so tainted. So many actors have gotten messed over by it. They need to get fresh faces. And I think that's what's happening with Marvel now. And I'm wondering, forget actors for a minute. I think that you could find a lot of great actors who would be willing to take a risk on these roles. But what about directors? And you have Matt Shakman, who did WandaVision, who's doing Fantastic Four, but that doesn't really excite me. Like maybe Chad Stahelski, who did John Wick, but those were much smaller scale action films. Like these would be huge things. Like Joss Whedon had experience with doing team movie or team productions with lots of characters. That's why he was able to bring the Avengers to life. I'm not really thinking about who could. Interesting, like maybe, what's his name? Is it Christopher McQuarrie, who did Mission Impossible and Top Gun Maverick? I'm surprised they haven't nabbed him for a superhero film, because I think that might be the only person in my head that might be able to pull this off with so many characters and something on such a big scale, because he has the experience and has worked in it before. Sam Raimi, like he could have done it, but I think that our experience has been tainted with him after what happened with not Spider-Man, Doctor Strange 2. Certainly not Taika Waititi, but yeah, I mean, maybe we could give Sam Raimi another chance, but I don't think he'll come back. Let me see. Anybody else mention another director? Jake Beam, the X-Men Evolution Rogue and her relationship with Kurt and Mystique, and that was an amazing compared to a lot of the adaptations. I agree. X-Men Evolution was great. I might be able to talk a little bit about it in an upcoming video. That is one of the series that really sold me on Rogue as a character with Kurt and Mystique, and that is something that they should take inspiration from in terms of those dynamics. Somebody said Matt Reeves. Matt Reeves needs to figure out if he's going to get the Batman Part 2 off the ground. And I have a hot take on Matt Reeves. I think that visually he's an excellent director, but I think that his scripts that he's works with need more help. I think that the editing needs more help. The Batman was too long. The Batman did not click with as broad a people as it could have. Galaxy Geeks, hi. Got to say hi on the live. Thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting the stream. Drew Goddard. I hadn't heard it. Let me look up what he's done. Let me look up him. Drew Goddard, director. He's done the recent, he did The Martian, he did Cloverfield. Did he do Cloverfield? I thought that was Matt Reeves. Because Cloverfield was very good. I thought that was Matt Reeves, though. Let me see. World War Z. So some of these are promising. Did you do the recent Matrix movie? Let me see. Oh, he did he do Deadpool? I'm sorry, I can't get his IMDb up. So he's known for Lost. That's an interesting one. The Good Place, Daredevil, yeah. The Defender is not very good. Lost, Alias. Has he why isn't it showing me all of his things? He did work on Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Yeah, this guy has quite the resume. So yeah, maybe he will work out. Drew Goddard, that's an interesting choice. So I think so far we have somebody in the comments who he got locked in for the next Matrix. Okay. I mean, if he wasn't locked in, I think given his resume, that would be a choice that might interest me a bit more. That's the first choice I've said so far that has me interested. I strangely would love an X-Force movie directed by John Krasinski. Yeah, like the X-Men movie is the one I'm really worried about. I think that you can experiment with different directors for different aspects of it. Galaxy Geeks, I agree with you on Matt Reeves. I don't think he's really that great, sadly. Yeah, I agree, unfortunately. My opinion, I don't dislike the Batman, but it's just not as great to me the further I get away with it. Part of that might be that they never kept up my hype from it with getting a sequel, but that's how I feel about it. Guillermo del Toro for an anti-hero monster type movie like Carnage or the Hulk. Tony Gilroy of Born and Andor fame. Tony Gilroy of Andor, like that's interesting. So far, Drew Goddard looks interesting. I can't remember the other director we were talking about just a minute ago that might work out. Do you think Deadpool and Wolverine will be a good movie? I think it'll be an entertaining movie. I think that Ryan Reynolds is really good at marketing. I think he's made it clear this is just going to be a tear apart, entertaining movie. And I think that it'll make a lot at the box office because it's just going to be there to entertain people and give a lot of characters people want to see. So I think that that's going to work out. I would love other movies about other X-Men groups later on. New Mutants, done well. I agree. Generation X, Champions, X-Force, like Galaxy Geeks mentioned. Yeah, and if in case you weren't here earlier in the live stream, I was mentioning I just think that it's a little bit hard because so many X-Men franchises sound the same. X-Force, X-Factor, all of that, Generation X. And I think that it might be a little hard to create spin-offs for it where it isn't clear, okay, these are what differentiate these teams. And most of it is all teams. So I'm wondering how Marvel will handle that going forward because as I'm looking back at it in the comics, it's really, really hard to keep track of and what does this mean for it all. So yeah, we've got a writer. We don't know. We don't have a director. We don't have a release date yet. Hopefully the guy gave a great pitch and that's where he got the job. But let me see. I think I got something. But yeah, it's going to come down to director. But one thing that's interesting to me, about this is that we're just going straight forward with an X-Men movie. Like the Avengers created this formula. The Avengers created this formula where it was like you get a solo movie, another solo movie, and then you get a team up film. And this sounds like they're just going straight to a team up movie. It's just going to be X-Men off the bat. It could be that plans change. We don't know for sure. they might just be developing the X-Men movie far out and considering along the way, do we insert this solo movie first? Do we do this first before we build up to the X-Men film? It might be that they're just really trying to nail out what the vision is for their big film X-Men first, and that's what their plans are now. Which, if they take their time with it, that'll be great, because one of the big problems with Marvel lately is they're just churning things out so fast. But I also think that like this Deadpool and Wolverine film, like because it's going to save the box office again this summer. Marvel is going to save the box office again. It's going to put a fire into them where the executives are going to get to Kevin Feige and be like, we need that X-Men movie, because X-Men is the only franchise we have left going forward. Like Spider-Man's kind of in limbo because of Tom Holland and Sony. Black Panther, I've got a video coming out hopefully tomorrow about how that's kind of been uprooted. And so it's like X-Men is your pathway forward if Deadpool and Wolverine is successful. Somebody was kind enough to lay out the different X-Men teams in the comics. From Fusion Space, X-Men, Rescue Emergency Team, X-Force, Proactive Evil Mutant Hunters, X-Factor equals Work for the Government, Excalibur, European X-Men, Gen X, Teen Titans. Yeah, it's think about it from the perspective of just a normal person and just coming into this. You're a normal person, you see, and maybe they've got all these X-Men movies out, and you're like, oh, I like the first X-Men, I want to see the rest of them. It's like, well, X-Factor, X-Force, X this, X that, it just gets really, really complicated. Like, I think that when you branch it off to characters, if they're successful, like a Wolverine film or a Cable film or a Gambit film, I still really want a Gambit and Rogue film, I'm just saying. But if you branch it out to those characters, then it makes sense. It's because they all sound very individual, and that they're very much connected to just the same X-Men thing. It's not like all X stuff. Like, what differentiates these teams? It just gets complicated. I'm honestly worried for after Deadpool, because the next project is Agatha, which I have no idea will be any good. I want to bring that up. The Agatha marketing has been the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen, that they intentionally changed the title a million times just to say Agatha all along. It wasn't cute. It was aggravating. Yeah, I don't think that's the big thing going into Marvel in the future is, let's say that they have a great script for X-Men. Let's say that they hire a great director. Then they still have all this bad stuff in between that. They have the Agatha show, which everyone's been making fun of. Daredevil might be good. We'll see about that. But then you have Captain America 4, which people don't have any faith in. You have Thunderbolts. So it's going to be a lot of bad stuff that they haven't gotten out yet that they need to get through, which is going to continue to tarnish their reputation up to the X-Men. And I have one more thing to say about that. Let me just get into these comments a little bit more. JesterBell from James Egan. Have you read House of X? What are your thoughts? My thoughts are, I'm not reading X-Men until they reboot to their From the Ashes thing this August, and I'm not paying attention to any of the stuff wrapping up the Krakoa, if that's what you're referring to. Let me see any more. Cap 4 has me so worried. There's a very political project, but politics in general is so divisive that movie will be hard to win in at a general. I agree. Politics are so divisive that anytime a movie tries to tackle it, it hasn't been working out unless you do it really, really well. But it's a lot of times it hasn't been working out lately. So this is what I wanted to talk about. Oh my goodness, I think I just lost it. But how much how popular is the X-Men going into it to drum up an audience? Like, what we're seeing is that Marvel productions that already have a built-in audience are doing very well. Marvel productions that didn't have as strong an audience, Ant-Man and the Wasp, the Marvels, are flopping. But ones that still have that fan base, if they're good, will bring people in, like Guardians of the Galaxy, like Deadpool. But how popular are the X-Men leading up to that? Because that's where the viewership of X-Men 97 comes in. Because it might be good for a Disney Plus animated show, but that's only considering that Disney Plus has not had much success with their original animated content. Disney Plus has not had much success in general. And the only reason I'm bringing this up is I'm wondering, I'm seeing that these characters, apart from Deadpool and Wolverine, I think Wolverine has enough momentum, but I'm seeing like Gambit, Rogue, Jean Grey, Cyclops, maybe not Storm, but a lot of these characters, as I'm just talking about them on my channel, and most of the people on my channel know the MCU. They know DC, they know Batman, but they don't know X-Men as well. I've seen that. Most of the people on my channel said that they didn't even watch X-Men 97. And I've seen that elsewhere, people complaining about how they're into X-Men 97, but not a lot of people are watching. And that makes me think, like, how well known are the X-Men as an IP to the general public right now? They were huge in the 90s, but has all of that stuff with the Fox universe that people didn't like, and the years we spent away from it, has that dwindled their popularity and their relevance? Like, recently they had Gambit and Rogue appear in Fortnite, and I saw people saying, I have no idea who these characters are. And it makes me wonder, like, how much work do you have to put in to get an X-Men movie in the MCU successful? Because remember, the MCU no longer has that momentum where they can do anything and it will be successful because people trust Marvel and they'll watch it. It needs to build that back up. And that's why I'm nervous about getting a writer who hasn't proven that he has worked on a really, really successful movie. He just seems like he's an okay writer. He's like, you need to blow it out of the park with this film. You need to do what the first Avengers did in getting people back invested in these characters. And the Avengers just, that was an explosion for superheroes, but you want an explosion with this movie. Something that I think that they're hoping for with James Gunn's Superman movie. They're wanting to bring people back. It's not on the level where they don't have any momentum or any fan base whatsoever, like before the Avengers came out. But it is at a point where you need to really work at something that can just be spectacular to get people back in the mode so that they would want to watch X-Men spin-off films and all of that. And that's what worries me about it, because I'm like, can a writer like this and paired with the right director even do that with, as far as we know for now, not really a whole lot of build up to it. I mean, maybe there will be in Secret Wars and stuff, but they don't even have a director. They can't get anybody on board to do Secret Wars. And so that's the question. Are they going to scrap Secret Wars and just go straight to the X-Men? And I just think that it's a big lift to get there, because how many people know these characters and would be excited about them? Like Wolverine, for example, his highest grossing movie still only did about 600 million. That was Logan. And that might sound great, but it isn't when you consider that was used to be considered low for an MCU movie. Like when an MCU movie would do in the 600 million range, Marvel would panic because that was low for them. I think that Wolverine is an iconic character for Marvel fans and for the general public. I think Deadpool actually is a bit more popular in terms of drawing an audience right now. But like the Deadpool Wolverine, them together, that's going to really work. But in terms of the other X-Men characters, like the Fox universe was mainly just Wolverine for like 20 years. That's why he has a reputation. None of these other characters are really built up in the cultural zeitgeist yet. Like, I bet most people don't even know Cyclops from X-Men 97. They know him as the bad version from the Fox universe, if they know him at all. And so that's a big question of how much of a lift is it to get people invested in these characters, especially if you don't want to have Wolverine be the main character, which he shouldn't be. It should be Cyclops and Jean as the main characters. Okay, we have a lot of people been talking to me. I'm sorry about that. The X-Men are pretty popular in comics. Aren't they the highest selling Marvel comic aside from Spider-Man? Yes, of course, but I'm talking about in terms of how the mainstream see them. Like the built-in comic book fan base to get us hyped is there, but I'm wondering what is the heavy lift to get the mainstream audiences in them. Galaxy Geek says, when you look at X-Men 97, the views were not as good as you would want. The show is loved by Marvel fans, but normal movie fans are not going to go watch. I agree. And a big part of that is it is a revival of a 90s show. And so already its appeal is more niche. They made it more adult than that show. So that's why it made it that way. It's mostly only a lesson for Marvel in terms of giving fans what they want and reminding them that respecting the source material is important, even if they did make certain adaptations and worsen them in ways I didn't like. Overall, like that's what X-Men 97 was, an adaptation of 90s comics. Okay, Nicholas Livet, he's echoing my point. People like Deadpool, people like Wolverine. Of my friends, I legitimately couldn't tell you who else would know any other character. Yeah, that's my problem. And these are great characters, but that's why I was thinking, like, do a Wolverine movie first and like have it end where like he battles the Hulk like he does in his first appearance, and then Charles Xavier comes and invites him on the team, like, and have that lead into it. And a Wolverine movie, I think, could be reasonably low budget, so you could try that. You should read Grant Morrison's X-Men run. It's so good. I actually have not read Grant Morrison's X-Men yet. I've read mostly Chris Claremont stuff, 90s stuff, some recent stuff. But I have not gotten around to reading Grant Morrison yet. I've read some of Mike Carey's stuff. I will admit I have not read Grant Morrison's X-Men just yet, apart from knowing some of the famous parts of it. Fusion Space says X-Men books sold because they were cool and had art by hot artists. They were also really violent and gory, exciting stuff, and no censorship like every other medium enforced. Well, they did have some censorship. I've read those books. Like, I think that the 2000s were the most harsh with it. X-Men is still popular. A total recast and a great trailer can bring momentum back. It went out with Dark Phoenix, which was a whimper. Yeah, I mean, it's still popular. You know, maybe the problem with X-Men 97 is it's a cartoon. It's on Disney Plus, which not a lot of people have. And it's a cartoon continuation of an older show. That might be why it wasn't getting as much viewership. And so, you know, maybe just live action and really flashy and looking like a really exciting movie is enough to bring people back in. So I've gone for 35 minutes. I didn't want this to be a huge live stream, but I hope that you guys enjoyed talking. I'm not wrapping it up just yet. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I miss doing these kind of live streams. We should do more of them where we're just talking about news and chatting with each other. The word is normies when we talk about the appeal and draw of the average audience member. Sorry about that. Wasn't sure if that was a current term for it or not. King Thor, what are your thoughts on my earlier comment? Well, I didn't see your earlier comment, King Thor, so you might have to write it down again. James Egan. To be fair, mainstream people didn't know who the Avengers were, but Marvel made them a household name with good storytelling. They can do it again with the X-Men. Yeah, I agree, but that would require an Avengers level event movie, like I was saying, and that's why I was a little bit concerned about this writer, because I'm like, he hasn't worked on anything really spectacular yet. So what about him? I do think that, you know, trailers, marketing, on the same level of the Avengers can win people back. But it's crazy because before with the Avengers, we were at a point where people just didn't know this property who needed to be brought in. Now we're at a point where there is a group of people legitimately ticked off by Marvel who need to be brought back. Like, if you say X-Men movie, if you said X-Men movie 5 years ago, people would have been hyped beyond the world. But now when you say X-Men movie, some people go, oh, Marvel's going to mess it up. And that's the problem that they're in right now. Let me see. Let me make sure that I get people. Let me see. What do you think they should do with the X-Men? Because the X-Men is about prejudice, but most people in the MCU seem to be like superheroes. Well, I think that X-Men isn't just about prejudice. It's about superheroing and a lot of more stuff than that. I think it actually works because it shows the insanity of the bigotry. Like, you already have people who have powers with superpowers, but people have decided they hate mutants. And people say that means the X-Men don't make sense. But the more I thought about it, it actually does make sense. Like, there's earlier episodes of like Star Trek. If you watch the one where the guy has black on one side and white on the other, and then he's so hateful to the other species that have black and white on the opposite ends, like, that just showed the ridiculousness of racism. And I think that the X-Men could be shown to see the ridiculousness of racism as well. But they still work as superheroes. That's what they're also meant to be. Have you read Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe? No, I have not. I'm not very big on Deadpool. JDA speculates that Disney Marvel will remove the comics department to integrate it into the MCU due to their losses. I don't trust John Delarose. He has not been accurate on anything. I don't watch his channel. Disney and Marvel will shutter their comic division when they shutter it. Like, people have been saying that for years and they haven't. Right now, Marvel is getting ready to revamp their X-Men, so they're not showing any signs of stopping. They're, in fact, showing signs of changing it to be more traditional to those versions of the characters to bring people on board. So I don't think that that's going to happen. Let me see. Okay, I'm going to wrap things up now since we've gone for 40 minutes. Okay, last call for any questions that you guys might have. Last call for questions before we wrap things up. Let me make sure that there is not any more news here. Let's see. Okay, Okay, last questions. Oh, thank you. $5 from Dakari the Professor. Here's some more love for me, JesterBell. Also, I think Marvel should use the X-Men anime lineup: Cyclops, Storm, Wolverine, Beast, and Armor. That's interesting. They might bring Armor in. I haven't read a lot from her character yet. But it might be interesting if they bring in characters from different eras, like some from the 60s, some from the 90s, some from modern era. That would be interesting if they brought them all in. Thank you so much, Dakari, for the super chat. Let me see. Any last questions? What X-Men character we haven't seen much or at all in live action would you want to see in the new movie? Gambit, because they haven't. I know he's been in animation. They killed him in animation, but he was in 5 minutes in X-Men Origins Wolverine. I just want to see a good portrayal in a full movie. Everyone check out the Astonishing X-Men motion comic. Whedon's run the animated panels, and it's great. Yes, very good stuff. And I think that's all for the questions. I'm not seeing any more questions now. Okay. Well, I think that's all for tonight. Thank you all. I really enjoyed this discussion with you all. I enjoyed seeing all of your picks for directors. If you would like to see more of these kind of live streams where we're just discussing more news, let me know in the comments below. I'd kind of like to do these more than all the community posts, because community posts, I just spurt stuff out and people take it however they take it. But here I can actually talk about things and clarify things. So thank you guys so much for.
Don't miss the super chat. There's a super chat.
I got it.
Did you?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't.
So thank you all for watching, and I will see you guys next time.
You got the super chat?